Welcome to the August 29, 2023 meeting of the Chatham Select Board. Please note, this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify the chair. Seeing none. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29, 2023 signing of the Acts of 2023 extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 20, until March 31st, 2025, this meeting of the Chatham Select Board is being conducted in person via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceeding as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 203-386-491#, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Chatham TV, quote, in parentheses, now Xfinity Channel 8 and 1070, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. So first thing I'm going to do this evening is do a roll call. Mike Schell, you are online. Mike, are you connected with us?
I am connected. I could hear you. I hope you could hear me.
Yes, we can. Thank you. Select Board Member Jeff Dykens.
Present.
Select Board Member Shireen Davis.
Present.
Select Board Member Dina Castro.
Present.
And Corey Metters is present. All right. We have a hearty agenda this evening. We're going to kick it off with minutes in a moment, and then basically we have our minutes, we have our public announcements and agenda request. We have two public hearings, one for the FY 2024 tax classification hearing, and a water rate public hearing. We will have public comments on our business agenda, which is very lengthy this evening. And just a quick little rundown for the highlights so you are prepared. Our business agenda this evening consists of a proclamation of the Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, a debt discussion, existing authorized on unused future projects. Our Finance Director, Alex Halela, will present that for us. The September 18th special town meeting warrant article review. Review the articles and vote recommendations on prior fiscal year bill payment appropriations, FY24 budget adjustments and transfers, borrowing rescissions, the new Center for Active Living facility design and construction, a zoning bylaw amendment map change for 1610 and 0 Main Street, the declaration of surplus town property at 193 Stony Hill Road with contingencies, design and engineering for reuse of 193 Stony Hill Road for housing with contingencies. We will then close the warrant, which will include ordering the articles and the motion assignments. We will discuss a potential select board meeting agenda schedule change. We will discuss the Affordable Housing Trust composition and transition, and then the board will finish up the evening with reappointments to the Constable and Register of Voters, with final action on the presentation of the town manager's monthly report for July of 2023. So with that hearty agenda ahead of us, we will start with the minutes of August 15th, 2023. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any corrections, omissions? None? All right. Select Board Member Schell.
No, did you think I had?
No. We're going to do a roll call. I'll start with you. If we.
So forgive me. I'm sorry. Aye.
Thank you, Mike. Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member DeCastro.
Aye.
And Select Board Member says aye. Second set of minutes is for August 22nd, 2023. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Any omissions, corrections? Dean?
Just a misspelling of someone's name. I don't know if Mike caught this. He might have. And on page 7, in the very last sentence, it's John Huether. I think John spells his name Huether.
He does.
Yes.
And beyond, it's on page 1 as well, with those in attendance.
Okay, thank you. I didn't catch that.
Okay. Additional corrections or comments?
I'm sorry.
Mike?
I have a couple. Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Okay, on page 3, section 3, the third full paragraph, third full paragraph, second line, I would strike the word and insert a site work. And the reason I'm suggesting that is the implication of the minute as drafted suggests that there was an outside look at the entire estimate. I think it was confined to the site work.
I lost it.
Okay,
Where is this?
I think that
I lo-
that was the Diggett work.
It's the paragraph, it was noted that CHA, that's the
Could-
paragraph
could-
he's referring to.
Could you read what the change is?
Sure, so currently it reads, a local contractor was also asked to provide an estimate.
Okay,
And Mr. Shell is, excuse me, suggesting that it say a local contractor was also asked to provide a site work estimate.
the site work
Okay.
estimate, okay.
okay, makes sense. All right,
My next one is on page 5. At the conclusion of the third full paragraph on page 5, that's the paragraph that begins, I'm sorry, I'm looking at two different, this was, yeah, there were several places, the first one being this one, the paragraph that begins with Joanne Goodman. I would add a sentence at the end of that paragraph that says, Select Board Member Davis responded to these questions.
okay,
And then the next paragraph, similarly, at the end of that paragraph, I would add, Mr. Pomeroy responded to these questions.
okay,
And then at the conclusion of the fifth full paragraph, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the Elaine Gibbs paragraph, I would add Mr. Bargman responded to the solar panel question.
okay,
And then my last, I'm going to withdraw the last thought I had. So that's all I had.
all right, thank you. Anything else? All right, with all that said, Select Board Member Shell,
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens,
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis,
Aye.
Select Board Member Nacastro,
Aye.
and Select Board Member Metter says aye. All right. Public announcements and agenda item request. I'll start with the board first. Any member of the board have a public announcement or agenda item request? Mike? Nope. We're good. Staff, does anyone from the staff?
Nope.
All right. Does anyone from the public who is in-house this evening have a public announcement or agenda item request? We're on a roll. Anyone online have a public announcement or agenda item request?
Nope.
All right. Moving on, public hearing. FY 2024 tax classification hearing. We have our town assessor, Ardell Kelly, present. Ardell, I'll have you to come up and kick this public hearing off. Good evening.
Good evening. We have 4 points, 4 options for you to address in the classification hearing. First, let me tell you that the tax rate approved by the Massachusetts Department of Revenue was $3.57. This is a decrease of 31 cents from last year. The average increase throughout the town this year is 17%. Last year, it was 20%. There are neighborhoods that are higher than lower than that average. The 4 options to be addressed are, should there be a single tax rate or a split tax rate? Historically, the percentages of the residential has been in the 90s. This remains the same as the residential percentage, which was certified by the Department of Revenue for FY24 is 94.4%, and commercial is 4.2%, and industrial is 0.36%. Historically, the Select Board and the Board of Assessors have voted against splitting the tax rate to not cause hardship on the commercial and industrial classes. Should a discount be given to parcels in open space? In the town of Chatham, we do not have class of open space. Open space requirements have historically been handled through conservation efforts and the Chatham Conservation Foundation. The third, should a partial tax exemption be given to all qualified small commercial properties? The percentage again is 4.2%, which historically the Select Board and the Board of Assessors have not granted exemption due to this percentage that could create a hardship. The fourth option is, should a partial tax exemption be given to all qualified owner-occupied residential properties? As stated in prior discussions, this would have to be addressed in January to be able to execute an exemption in a fair and equitable manner for the upcoming tax year. There is a ratio of 55% of seasonal population and 45% year-round. The Board of Assessors on August 28, 2023 voted at their meeting to not have a split tax rate, not to have a discount for open space due to no open space class, and not to have a commercial or residential exemption. The LA5 in your agenda packet informs of the percentages between the classes and the excess levy of $3,310,678.27. I tried to keep it brief tonight due to the agenda, but I just want to take a moment to recognize Alex's last classification hearing, and the assessing office and the Board of Assessors would like to say thank you, for we not be standing here each year for the hard work that you've done. Thank you, Alex. And that concludes.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation. Questions or comments from the board? Dean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dale, just for clarification, the vote of the Board of Assessors was also to reject a residential tax exemption?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone from the board have a question or comment? Anyone from the public? It's a public hearing, so no hands in the audience here. Anyone online have a question or comment?
No, no one.
Seeing none, okay, I will entertain a motion. Mr. DeCastro.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the town of Chatham continue to tax all classes at the same rate by adopting a factor of 1, and to reject the residential exemption and the small commercial exemption.
All right, do I hear a second?
Second.
Second, okay. Additional comments? All right, all those in favor, Select Board Member Shell,
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens,
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis,
Aye.
Select Board Member DeCastro,
Aye.
and Select Board Member Metter says aye. All right, thank you very much.
You're more than welcome.
Next is the water rate public hearing. I will ask that our clerk read the notice in our packet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chatham Select Board will hold a public hearing on August 29th, 2023 at 5:30 PM in the large meeting room at the Town Office Annex, 261 George Riddle Road, to consider a change in the water rates for households with a second irrigation meter installed. All interested parties are encouraged to participate. Select Board.
Thank you very much. Who is going to do the presentation? Rob?
Mr. Chair, our Water and Sewer Advisory Committee Chair, Jeff Colby, is also here.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much. Rob, how are you doing tonight?
Good evening, how are you? So at the February 13th, 2023 meeting with the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee, the committee voted to recommend to the Water Commissioners or the Chatham Select Board that the annual water meter charge for irrigation meters be set at $35 annually. Currently, properties with registered irrigation meters are charged $35 per summer quarter or $70 annually. Currently, there are 626. At the time of this writing this memo, there were 626. Now there are 700 irrigation meters being charged a quarterly rate. Using the model and numbers of 626, $70 annually equates to approximately $43,820. The proposed rate of $35 would reduce that revenue by half, or $21,910. Considering the number of current irrigation meters and the potential for registered irrigation systems to install second meters, Revenue reduction can be expected somewhere between $21,910 and $52,815. I think it's also important to remember that this revenue is new revenue, and until recently, these additional fees didn't exist. So, we are recommending that the Select Board, acting as the Board of Water Commissioners, vote to reduce the charge for water irrigation meters to $35 annually and be billed at a rate of $17.50 per summer quarter.
Thank you very much. All right, questions or comments from the board? Dean?
Mr. Chairman?
Dean and then Mike, please.
No, go ahead, go
Yeah,
ahead.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this makes sense. It was brought to the attention of the Water and Sewer Committee by a citizen who has a private irrigation system, but not a private well. It makes sense because currently these property owners are being charged for a winter charge when they're not really using the irrigation system in the winter. So that's the reason for reducing the charge by $35. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mike, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. It took me a while to understand this, and in light of Dean's comments, I may still not understand it, but it's my understanding what we're talking about here is not charging for water, but rather for meters. And the thought is that there is a disincentive to go ahead and get the second meter from those people, for those people who have irrigation systems on town water. I understand the logic of that, but first of all, the number that in question, the $35, is immaterial or maybe even minuscule. And secondly, in light of at least my view that we should not be, first of all, reducing revenue, generally speaking, which services water debt, but secondly, reducing revenue in a context where effectively we're talking about putting treated water on lawns, which is not the way I think we ought to be using treated water. While I respect the logic and the intent of the advisory committee, I really think this is not something that we ought to be doing.
All right, thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, thank you, Corey. Just so I'm clear as well, this is a charge for the meters themselves?
Correct.
So we're reducing the charge for the meter itself?
We're cutting it in half, basically.
Yeah, okay, exactly.
I don't think it is. I think it's for the usage.
No, the usage
this
is
is
remaining the same. So
device.
irrigation usage is higher than potable water usage.
This is for the device itself.
So they're paying annually for the device.
They are paying annually for the device, yes, or quarterly.
Well, I thought it was for usage, which is why I said what I said earlier. The chair is coming forward. Maybe he can
Jeff,
explain
go
a
ahead,
little
please.
further.
Yes, thank you. Jeff Colby, Chair of the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee. Another item that, and this is a great discussion, but another item that came up at our advisory committee meeting as far as our thinking and action towards this recommendation is that this quarterly fee, typically has a genesis in that people used to have to get out of their vehicle, go read the meter physically, get back in. So that quarterly fee is independent of the usage because of the processing, the time-consuming nature that in the past that was necessary. Currently, it's read just by driving by. There's really no extra effort in reading meters currently, given the current way that the DPW reads meters. So that was part of our thinking as well. This is only for people that have a second meter, so they're still paying the full charge on the first meter.
And they are reading both meters at the same time. So there's
Correct.
not an additional effort to read both meters.
It's basically just a transmittal that the signal picks up and it collects the data.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, so it's simply a second meter charge that you're talking about the labor cost side of this, or how much it costs to deal with the system itself.
That initially plus replacement costs for
Okay,
meters.
so how much do they actually cost us in real dollars?
several $100s, anywhere from, depending on the size, anywhere from, say, $200 to $400.
So each meter is several $100s, and we charge the 35 annually twice?
But the property owner pays for the meter up front as well.
Okay, so this is just the service fee?
Yes.
Okay, that makes more sense. Thank you.
All right, does the board have any questions at the moment? I'm going to go to the public. Does the public have any questions or comments on this item? Is there anyone online that has any questions or comments?
There is, Mr. Chair. Ms. Friedman?
Gloria, please go ahead.
Gloria, you're muted.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
We can hear you now, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is Gloria Freeman. And of course, I support this change in water meter charges, and I'm sure many others do as well. Property owners who followed the rules, some at great expense, have been paying an additional $70 annually for a service charge that was never explained. It did not make sense to members of the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee who have recommended this change. DPW Director Faley has given you some big numbers in his fiscal impact statement. Excuse me. These figures are aspirational since they include the potential for registered irrigation systems. His numbers would be astronomical if he included the many unregistered systems as well. It seems to me a greater effort should be made to get all systems registered. It might not be easy to do, but well worth the effort. According to Mr. Faley's numbers in his memo, there are only 626 irrigation meters that have been registered out of the 1,509 registered irrigation systems on the town's water supply. While Mr. Faley provides the potential reduction in revenue, the fact is that the only revenue coming in at this time is from the current 626 irrigation meters. I don't know how.
Lost you, Gloria.
Gloria, you're muted again.
Okay, how's this?
We can hear you.
Oh, good. I don't know how many years ago, 5 maybe, you issued a mandate that property owners had to add these second meters or install a well. But the process has been very slow, and there is no incentive to property owners to register their irrigation system and/or add a second meter. Perhaps a fine would provide that encouragement. Meanwhile, those who did the right thing, got the second meter, are being charged the highest cost per unit of water, $3.30 winter rate and $5.95 summer rate. I tried to get a well, but I was given by Paul Jenkins an estimate close to $20,000 with a warning that at my location, water might not be reached at all. So I put in the second meter. I hope that you will repeat again. You have done this twice. Your request to the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee to discuss the disparity between those of us who followed your mandate and installed the second meter or a well, and those who have not complied, and what should be done about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Freeman. Additional individuals from the online audience who want to speak?
No, there's none.
None? Okay, back to the board. Dean?
Yeah, I understand the arguments against the recommendation of the committee, but we wanted people to have a separate meter because we wanted to charge them more for the usage, because they're taking this treated water and pouring it into the ground. So if on top of that, we're going to hit them with a $70 annual charge, and they're not using the water in the wintertime, it seems to be a disincentive to put in the meter, even though they're required to put in the meter. And the suggestion that Ms. Freeman makes about fining people may be something that the committee might want to take a look at for further recommendation to the town. But I guess I'm inclined to follow the recommendation of the committee. I understand the arguments on the other side. It's not a whole lot of revenue that's being lost. The real revenue that's being lost is what we're losing from the folks that have irrigation systems but haven't put a second meter in because they're paying the lower water usage charge. And they're getting away with it.
Shereen.
Thank you.
Shereen.
So I can understand, a fining to encourage, I guess, people to go ahead and put the second meter in. But what I would rather see the committee work on is an outreach plan to encourage people with, maybe in conjunction, just a little more information out there. But when people apply for, for an irrigation system, and now it's required that they have a meter, correct? And it's encouraged that they do a well, or is it required they do a well?
No, not required, but it's
encouraged.
as an option.
So it sounds, and from Gloria's example, Ms. Freeman's example, it can be cost prohibitive to a lot of people to do that. So I guess, is there a bylaw or a regulation that is that in place to require this, or is this, I'm not sure.
Well, I think part of the background of why, I remember the Economic Development Committee talked about this at some length. One, we are putting treated water onto people's lawn, which doesn't make any sense. Philosophically, that's, to go forward to put your own well system in. Now, this has to be on a case-to-case basis. Some people may pay $5,000, maybe $10,000, $20,000. I think it's an economical decision for each single property owner because, the economics may or may not work if this ever evolves to a separate rate for different irrigations. If we end up doing a higher rate for the irrigation, there's a lot of considerations in place, but I think you're trying to understand, or what we were asking is how to mandate us getting the second meter, people to move forward on the second meter.
My question is, do we have a requirement when somebody goes for a permit to put an irrigation system in, whether that's required or not, that it's mandated at that moment that they have one or two things?
New installations, yes, correct?
Yes, so people who want to put an irrigation system on, they have to prove basically that they've had an irrigation system in place by January 1st, 2021. We will not allow any new irrigation systems to be hooked up to the town water system.
Got it. Okay, so it's sort of the backlog of what we're dealing with. And I'm sorry that my background on this is sketchy, but what I'm trying to get to is how do we, the idea that people are just going to go along and do whatever they're doing now without some encouragement from the town. Fining isn't the best way to do it. I think it's the education and the outreach and the way to figure out from maybe the Water Sewer Committee can work with our communications people to try to get more information out there to the general public that this is what we'd like to see. And, and take it from a stance of not being do this because but this is good for the, we're doing this to encourage, community buy-in to supporting the water system.
So people have been signing up. It's been slow. I think COVID shut a lot of things down. With 700 irrigation meters being charged now, quarterly rate, we have another 36 households that have meters installed that haven't been charged yet. They just missed the billing cycle. And another 216 households that are waiting for plumbers. It's just a contractor shortage right now. So that's 952 total out of the 1,509. We still have people coming in every week registering their irrigation systems. So it is a slow process. We'd like it to speed up a little bit. What we'd like to do this winter is a deeper dive into checking usage rates, or usage, different addresses, really doing, a comprehensive look at who's using what, and we'll have to look next summer when irrigation season starts again, and we'll have to do kind of spot checks and hold people accountable that way, and we'd have to, based on the guidance of the select board, whether we write letters or if there is a fine or, whatever the next step is, but we have to identify who needs to hook up that hasn't hooked up yet.
So thank you for that. That's really helpful information, and maybe we get that report back. In saying all that, I wouldn't want to see a fine system in place at this moment then, since you're you're making the effort to find out the information. Thank you.
Mike, do you have a question?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to add a comment that I think, first of all, Rob's comments sort of dovetail with what I was thinking, which was we need more comprehensive input as to who all has irrigation systems, what their status is vis-a-vis the town. Are they registered? Do they have meters? And all of that, addresses the issue of enforcement, which it's hard to do equitably without having complete data. And then it seems to me the second thing is making sure that the rate structure is framed in a way that incentivizes people to do what we want them to do. And this is with respect to irrigation systems that are on town water and are entitled to be on town water. I don't know exactly, as I understand it, people who are unregistered are paying a lower rate than people who are registered, which is maybe, or it sounds to me as if it's backwards. All of that context says to me that worrying about a $35 charge for a meter, which, on the surface seems inequitable vis-a-vis people who are don't have a meter for whatever reason. But nevertheless, from my perspective, the real issue is people with irrigation systems on town water versus everybody else. And in that context, I would say reducing revenue, even if it's immaterial, in principle anyway, doesn't make sense. So that's my view.
All right, thank you. All right, final thoughts from the board?
I think we ought to identify those folks that are on town water that aren't registered and incentivize them to get registered and pay the $70.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to think, there was I remember a couple summers ago, someone was going down our neighborhood door to door with a clipboard and asking questions and about irrigation and which some of the stuff I thought was already in the systems, but I guess some of our neighbors' records weren't quite up to date, but there's been some effort to collect that data. I guess want to just clarify where we exactly are with that, because what would be the next efforts into, quote, identifying the other 700 or 600?
600 and something, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the data townwide is complete, other than observations with who was running irrigation systems and knocking on doors at that point.
Dean?
I don't know how you incentivize people who are currently not registered to pay more.
You don't.
You don't. And yet they should pay more,
They should, philosophically, yes.
okay? And that was the thinking of not just the Water and Sewer Committee, but the Select Board a few years ago when we revised the rates. We said if you're irrigating your lawn with town water,
You gotta pay more.
you should pay more, and they should.
Correct.
So, I mean, I don't know what the sentiment of the board is at large on this. I would be inclined to offer a motion, but if the motion's going to fail, maybe this goes back to the Water and Sewer Committee for further review.
Mr. Chairman?
Please, yes. You want to come up to the mic?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. How are you? I'm Joanne Sprague, 10 Henshaw Drive, and I am an owner of the second meter. And I never realized until sitting here tonight how many people are using that extra water to water their lawns and aren't paying the price that I'm having to pay for mine through my second meter. So I think there really ought to be something in place, because when everybody, those of us who are paying this extra charge by using the second meter, which we put in because we thought we were supposed to, I think you're going to have a revolution if you don't do something about getting the people who aren't paying for watering their lawns with town-treated water, and those of us who are. So I think the town needs to get serious about finding those who aren't paying their share. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. We have a hand up online.
Yes, you have Nicole Stern.
Nicole, please go ahead.
Thank you. I think everybody has good things to say, but I'm listening, and it seems like I heard all of this last year and the year before about how to get people that aren't registering their second meters to do so. We talked about fines, we talked about, people going out and checking the neighborhoods, but again, that was a year and a half, 2 years ago, and nothing has changed other than the people that followed the rules, that did the right thing, are subsidizing all the people that aren't doing the right things. So until there's a way to get them to do the right thing, I don't think that people should be paying more and subsidizing those that don't. This goes back into a lot of different areas where we raised our kids to do the right thing. And if they didn't, there were consequences. Well, there's no consequences. So I think that needs to change. And I don't think the people that do the right things need to be covering people that probably can afford it, a lot of them. Maybe some can't, maybe some will never sign up. But in the meantime, the people that did the right things are carrying everything on their shoulders. And one other thing that I personally feel strongly about is I do have a second meter. I did follow the rules. Again, this goes back, as a former speaker said, almost 5 years ago, before COVID. Then you pushed the date further because of COVID, and then it was extended again with the second meter. And yes, it was difficult, to get plumbers to come in and do it, but we at least sent in our $200 for a permit. So we were registered that we were trying, and we did ultimately find a plumber. Cost us a lot of money, but again, it goes back to following the rules and rewarding people that don't. Again, you wouldn't raise your kids that way. I didn't raise my kids that way. The other thing is there are also people that live in Chatham that are very concerned about water. Now, personally, I haven't had my irrigation system on for 2 years. I have it. I got a second meter, but I wanted to conserve. And yet, I was still charged the same thing because I had a second meter, even though I never used a drop of water. That's not right either. So we're sending two messages. We're sending a message, you need to get a second meter, and we're sending a message, other than this summer, to conserve water. So, and we're still paying, I still paid, and I'm sure other people did too, for a backflow check, which used to be $25. Now that's $100. And it doesn't matter whether your system is running, whether you have a second meter, you're paying that $100. There's something not right with this picture. If we need the money that badly, let's find it someplace and be upfront about it instead of going through the back door and trying to find it somewhere else. It's not right. People are pretty smart. they want to support our town, but the way it's being done is not equitable. And I think a lot of people are starting to feel like nobody cares whether it's equitable or not. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicole. All right. Board, oh,
Your other hand's up, Corey.
what am I seeing?
Ms. Gibbs.
Elaine, please go ahead.
Yes, I'll make it quick. I echo what several of the previous speakers said. I think until you can figure out a way to locate those people who have violated the law, because it was a law, I remember scrambling. I had to make a choice if I was going to put in a meter pit with the meter or a well, and I made sure I got in by the deadline. For those people who have ignored it, they will continue to pay lower rates, and to charge the rest who have made that decision. Not only are they paying, it may be a small amount, $35 or whatever extra. They did the right thing, and they went to the expense to put in the meter or to put in a well. And I think it's the equity here. It's totally unfair, and I have to believe there is a system where you can identify, you produce the bills to all the people. We all get our water bills. There has to be a way, some computer model that will show who those people are that are not on your list, because I'm on the old irrigation list and on the well list, and a lot of people are. So there are people out there who have not been paying, who have not done what they were supposed to, and they should be able to be identified because their bills spike. And it's a program, I would think, and I think it's worth investing in that because water is critical and it's being wasted. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elaine. Is there any additional online comments? Okay,
No.
Jeff and then Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Corey. Yeah, clearly we don't have the right model or approach here because there is inequity here. And I'm getting the sense that I don't think it's fair to penalize those that actually put in a second meter and then, whack them. So I'd be willing to support the recommendation of the Water Sewer Advisory Committee. However, I would also like to put on the table and ask the Sewer and Water Advisory Committee, along with other notable experts that we have here in town, to ID those, to echo Ms. Gibbs a bit, to ID those that have utilization that's out of the norm, that are on town water in the summer months, that, some way we should be able to identify those folks that are outliers and approach those folks. Now, we have struggled with this for a while, but I'd be willing to support the $35, reduction of $35. I don't think it's fair to penalize folks that have installed the second meter, but also, at the same time, we gotta do better. We gotta get a different model here, we have to have a different approach, because this isn't working. My comments.
Dean. Oh, sorry, Mike. I'm sorry, Mike.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Look, I think we all understand the issues here. Part of the reason that I raised my issues was I thought this didn't really address the real issues, which have been articulated not only by the board, but by the speakers from the public, the inequities. Apart from the other problem which is putting treated water on lawns, is a direction that I don't think we want to go. I think we want to try to find ways to either, well, we've stopped it, but to minimize it. That said, I think it is an inequity for people who've played by the rules and gotten the second meter to be charged when those who haven't played by the rules are not being charged. And while $35 a year is, as I said, immaterial, minuscule, or whatever, I would be prepared to support or move the recommended motion if that's the sense of the board.
All right, thank you, Mike. Dean.
Yeah, I will offer the motion in a moment, but I just wanted to say, I think we know who the recalcitrant parties are. There are 1,509 registered, where is Mr. Fairley? There are 1,509 registered systems, so we know who all these 1,509 people are, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And 626 of them have,
I think we're 700 registered, 216 waiting for plumbers,
yeah, right.
so we're 900 or something.
So there are about 900 that haven't put in the meter. Right,
I think
and you
they
could-
haven't registered.
There are 952 that have either registered or they're waiting for contractors.
Right. But we know who they are.
Yes.
do we know who the people are who have an irrigation system that predates the date when they're supposed to have put in the meter?
Not
We
all,
don't know.
and that's
We know-
the time-consuming piece, to field verify. We could look at their usage rates and get an
Okay.
idea of who may be in that group, but we have to really wait till, if we do it now, it's kind of late in the season, but I
Right.
think if we get the addresses and the lists together, correlate the information that we need, and then in the spring, we can start and we can really focus on targeting those property
Okay,
owners.
well, I think there's been some work done that you can build upon and take it to the next level. And I would leave that to the department and to the Water and Sewer Committee to come up with a recommendation on how to go about it in terms of enforcement or education. So I move that the Select Board, in its capacity as a Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners, vote to reduce the charge for water irrigation. I move that we reduce the charge for water irrigation meters to $35 annually and to be billed at a rate of $17.50 per summer quarter.
All right, do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, further discussion? All those in favor, Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Nacastro.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. That is 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Going to move into, let's see, irrigation, public comments on our business agenda. We have a lengthy agenda this evening. I will open up the floor to any individuals online or in public who would like to comment on our business agenda this evening. Anyone in the audience here have any questions or comments? Is there anyone online that has a question or comment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have one. Ms. Gibbs?
Elaine, please go ahead.
Thank you. I have two items. One is regarding the select board schedule. It's item D, I think. I don't know if possibly meeting every other week until December is seriously being considered, but I think the length of tonight's agenda illustrate what happens if you do that. This is a very, very extensive agenda, and I think we have many critical issues that we're going to be dealing with over the coming months, and they should be given sufficient time for discussion so that you guys aren't there until 10 o'clock at night. And I think it would also further restrict the public's ability to comment on multiple agenda items if they were only every other week, because like on this one, there are several that many people would probably want to weigh in on, and with the limitations, that would be difficult. So that's that. The other one I have is regarding the review of the articles and voting recommendations. I'm requesting that the prospect of tying in any way any promises that 1610 will serve as an overnight emergency evacuation shelter not occur now or at the special town meeting. I think it's premature. For 5 years, residents have asked that the community center remain open overnight, and we've been told that staffing by local staff was not possible. If we cannot provide local staff, the state and county guidelines are clear that if staffing is required by the county, it will be considered a regional shelter under county jurisdiction. They will determine if and when the shelter would open, and with the possibility that we would have to accept people from other towns. There are still numerous unanswered questions regarding 1610 as a location, whether or not a maximum capacity of only 80 people is sufficient for Chatham residents in the event of a natural or man-made disaster. With only 56 parking spaces, it's insufficient parking during blizzards, when snow plowing will result in the loss of even more of those parking spaces. There is no space for the required quarantining of individuals that may be contagious, which is a requirement. And with pets located on the second floor with no close access to the outdoors, which is supposed to be provided. And it's 2 miles from the fire department in bad weather if there's a medical emergency. Before any promise is made to voters, I believe there needs to be a separate dedicated public forum, not just a 5-minute conversation that occurred last week after 5 years of debate. This site has not been properly vetted and should not be promised. This is far too important for the health and public safety for the entire community to push this through with so many inadequacies of the 1610 location. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elaine. Any additional hands up?
No, that's it.
Okay. So we got, first item on our business agenda is to proclaim September as Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. Basically, Jill, go ahead.
Well, actually, Mr. Chair, typically we.
Read the proclamation. Yep. Would the clerk do the honors, please?
Yes, I certainly would. National Suicide Prevention Month, September 2023, proclamation for the town of Chatham, Mass. Whereas, with September being recognized as Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, the Cape and Islands Suicide Prevention Coalition invites our communities, mental health advocates, prevention organizations, survivors, and allies to join us in helping to destigmatize mental health and take proactive action towards suicide prevention. We seek to raise awareness and visibility of mental health and suicide prevention resources in our communities and help connect individuals with the appropriate support services. And whereas, according to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, AFSP, suicide is the second leading cause of death among individuals between the ages of 10 and 34, with more than 48,000 people dying by suicide annually in the United States. And whereas, with an average of 132 suicide deaths daily, and each one directly impacting 100 additional people, including friends, service members, family, social media connections, and neighbors, we know a significant number of individuals have been impacted by suicide. And whereas Barnstable County's suicide rate is 1.5 times higher, standing at 14.2 per 100,000, versus the Commonwealth of Massachusetts suicide rate of 9.5 per 100,000. We recognize the need to create hope through action locally. And whereas our local Cape and Islands Suicide Prevention Coalition works hard to spread the word about prevention, awareness, education, and action. And whereas the town of Chatham, Massachusetts publicly places its full support behind those who work in the field of mental health, education, and law enforcement. And whereas we encourage all residents to take time to understand mental health through education and recognize that we need to take care of our mental health while we take care of each other. Now therefore, be it resolved that we, the Select Board, do hereby proclaim the month of September 2023 as National Suicide Prevention and Action Month in the town of Chatham, Massachusetts, dated 29th day of August in the year 2023.
So thank you, Mr. Dykens. I will accept it as a formal motion. Do I hear a second?
Can I just add something?
Second and discussion.
Second, yeah.
Second, then please go ahead.
So in the letter that was written to the board from the co-chairs of the event, that there will be a suicide prevention ribbon ceremony at 1 p.m. at Cape Cod Community College, Tilden Library Steps, on September 14th. And there's also training on suicide prevention for town employees at no cost through the Institute for Mental Health at Cape Cod Community College. I find that to be good information for the public.
All right. Additional comments?
Thanks, Shireen.
We have a motion. We have a second. All those in favor, Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Nacastro.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Next item on our agenda, debt discussion, existing, authorized, and unused future projections. Finance Director Alex Halela. Good evening.
Yes, good evening. Yes, this was a request by Select Board Member Dykens, I believe, to have a deep dive on discussion on all sorts of debt. And right now, there actually is no presentation on this item. It will be on the next item, sorry. So right now, we've prepared a staff agenda report which discusses our existing debt, what authorized unissued debt is, future projections for debt that will be issued in the future that's already been authorized but has not been issued, as well as items that might be up for vote at the special town meeting, specifically the Center for Active Living. So right now, Chatham debt, we have a total debt which includes general fund and water debt. Sewer debt is included under the general fund, I've noted that in the report, of $90,146,874.89. And this goes out till 2024 or 2025, I believe. We usually issue debt in 20-year terms, except for the USDA rural loan program that was issued, I believe, for 40 years, and that's at a 2.75% interest rate, and that was part of the $19 million in grants that we received through the stimulus funds back in 2010-11. So I have on page 2 of the agenda report, you can see that wastewater debt is actually the largest portion of our outstanding debt, followed by buildings, which is 21%, water debt, again, paid by the water fund, the waterfront infrastructure, a small portion amount for land, and some road and sidewalk repairs. Moving on to page 3, I have a chart showing the existing debt service. Debt service is the amount that is required to pay the principal and interest every year. I know there's been questions that we're paying $7 million in interest. No, we pay principal payment every year along with interest payments. So we're similar to a mortgage, we're paying down the principal and the interest each year. So the annual debt service for FY 2024 is just $7,401,000, just over $7.4 million. And again, that includes payments under the Clean Water Trust, the general obligation funds, as well as any non-excluded debt. That is the general fund debt. The debt service for water is less than that. So moving on to page 4, we have the annual debt service for water for FY 2024 is $1,573,323. Again, this is paid for by water revenues. So we look at water debt when we issue new bonds or look to borrow for water. We look at the water revenues to make sure that there's enough to support the annual payments for water debt. Certain water projects are also eligible for the Clean Water Trust State Revolving Fund. Those are eligible at 2% interest loans. And if it involves PFAS, which we were looking at for moving forward for the 19.8 authorization that we have, those might be eligible for 0% loans. We're still waiting to hear on that. So that's existing debt and debt service right now, and I'll move on to what authorized and unissued debt is, unless you have any questions.
No, we're good.
Could I just
Okay.
ask
Oh,
one?
Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Alex, thank you very much. Can you just explain, I'm at the top of page 4 of your report in the carryover paragraph. The last sentence says undesignated fund balance in the water fund is $1,038,000, et cetera. Is that the excess of water receipts over estimated revenues, or is that something else?
No, that is exactly what it is. The undesignated fund balances would be, if we had an enterprise fund, what is known as retained earnings. So that is the excess that we have moving forward. So that is where when we talk about water surplus or water revenue paying for items, we have our water revenue coming in as well as water surplus.
And that's cumulative over the years?
Yes, every year.
Okay. Yeah.
Every year the books close on June 30th, and then we have to recertify the amount that's available.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so moving on to authorized and unissued debt. Authorized unissued debt is the debt that has been approved by town meeting. However, we have not issued any bonds for that yet, either general obligation long-term bonds or through the Clean Water Trust. So, for example, and I have here on the page, we have what has been authorized by town meeting, what has been previously bonded, what we've either paid down or been rescinded, which we'll be talking about for our special town meeting. We have a small rescission. And then, so what is still authorized? In the chart, you can see that I have what is known as the Clean Water Trust commitments. There's a column there. Those are items that has not been issued, so we have not issued debt. However, we have commitments or interim loans with the Clean Water Trust at 0% interest rates. So we note that so we don't overexpend any of our authorizations. So again, our authorized unissued is, for this purpose, or for what we report, is $85.8 million. However, our Clean Water Trust commitments are just over $40.3 million. We can't put those as authorized and issued until they actually are issued, but we hold them here. So we're looking at authorized unissued debt of $45,564,542. So again, that's we track those again just to make sure that we don't overexpend ourselves. On that chart, you can see that we have two small items, and I note this on the top of page 5, that we're looking to rescind the authorization, $25,000 for road betterments. This was for L Street and Skyway, and $16,635 that was not expended for the fire station project. So again, those projects are complete, so we will ask town meeting to take that authorized and unissued off the books. And we've done this before. We did, I think, usually, I think it was probably about 5 years ago or so. Okay, moving forward to our debt projections and our impact on debt service. And this is something we routinely do when we present an article for borrowing to town meeting. We try to, estimate what the impact will be on the debt service. We have to use our current year valuations as well as our tax rates. So we always notice that, give notice to the taxpayer that we're using those, and it might vary when we issue debt. Currently, we're looking at an interest rate of 5% if we're going to issue debt in the next coming years. Again, we look to our financial advisors. We tell them we're using a 20-year term, and what is their current rates right now, and what's their best projection. When we went out, they said it was a 4.5% interest rate. To be on the conservative side, we'd rather say it came in less than what it is. We're using a 5% for our current projections. And our most recent bonds had a true interest cost of just over 3.4% back in June. And we always look at the level of debt service as part of the budget process. So again, we don't want to impact the taxpayer too much, or the debt service. We don't want it to spike too much. We try to keep it as level as possible, but realizing that there are certain projects and infrastructure improvements that are necessary to complete. So looking at our debt service, we try to keep it, as I said, as level. But again, we continue to expand the wastewater system. The original program was to issue new debt for wastewater, authorize it every 2 years. We do look to issue debt as we get the debt drop off. So as old obligations expire, we'll try to fill those in and plan those accordingly. So again, moving forward, we said the sewer project is a large project, and also the water treatment plant for wells 5 and 8 is a large project that has just been authorized, but we'll look to put that in as water debt drops off without impacting the ratepayers, negatively impacting the ratepayers, I should say. The other thing that we looked at is the offsets. We do have certain offsets that will reduce the amount of debt. Probably the biggest one right now is the Cape Cod and Islands Water Protection Fund. When the room occupancy tax was expanded to include short-term rentals, there was a 2.75% increase added to that, a surcharge added to that, and that goes to the Cape Cod and Islands Water Protection Fund. And that's for all of 15 towns in Barnstable County. So to date, Chatham has been awarded $6,151,603 for our pre-existing debt. So this is all debt related to sewer, which qualifies under the Clean Water Trust. So in order to get the relief from, or the subsidy from the Water Protection Fund, Cape Cod and Islands Water Protection Fund, it has to be eligible for the Clean Water Trust State Revolving Fund. So we have that, this $6.1 million, and you might recall at town meeting, we transfer in the $615,160 every year, which means that it's not coming from the tax rate, it's coming from that program. So that's one of the offsets that we have right now.
That's for 10 years?
It's for 10 years, yes. And the new debt that's being issued now will get the subsidy right up front from the Cape Cod and Islands Water Protection Fund. So as I've noted here on page 5, we've received just over $2 million under the Clean Water Trust 28-24 and $331,246 under their interim loan, CW 1947, which we expect to close sometime this fiscal year. So that will just reduce the amount of interest on those loans. It will reduce the principal amount, so we won't be paying interest on a higher principal amount. So it's just taking it off. It's a grant. Any questions on that? Okay. So also we did receive funds from the American Rescue Plan Act for loan forgiveness under the Clean Water Trust 2126, which is Clean Queen Anne Pumping Station, and Clean Water 2138, which was stormwater, for just under $200,000 for the first one and just under $270,000 for the second issue. Another offset that we have now is the newly adopted wastewater capital stabilization fund, which is funded through the Harwich IMA funds, or the IMA funds that we receive from Harwich for them, allowing them to join our sewer system and our wastewater treatment plant. And currently, the balance in that fund is $6,357,933.68. And that's made up of the first IMA payment of the 2.265, an additional 1.5 milestone payment, as well as the payment from Harwich for their share of the interconnection project along East Harwich. We will be asking town meeting shortly in September to use $1.3 million of that to fund or to supplement the belt filter press funding. Again, those are funds that we will not need to borrow for or issue debt because that's existing funds. And we do have, again, 2 more milestone payments of $1.5 million each that will be dedicated into that stabilization fund. And we're hoping to use that to offset debt service for items that don't qualify for the 0% loans. Mostly design and engineering don't qualify for those 0%. So I'll pause here if you have any questions on that.
Quick questions or comments from the board? I think we're good.
Okay. So again, debt service, looking at our projected debt service, and this is based on borrowing if the Center for Active Living, the belt filter press, the Center for Active Living is approved, the belt filter press, which has been approved, future wastewater and transfer stations. We're looking at probably a high debt service of $8.2 million in FY 2030 based on our projections. These are all subject to change, again, depending on interest rates and what we'll receive when we go out to bid for the debt service. But again, we're using a 5% interest loan except for wastewater, where we know that we will qualify for 0%, and then so it's sort of a blended rate because not all of it qualifies for the 0%.
Mr. Chairman?
Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question. The under debt service, you mentioned the possible benefits of refunding of current bonds, which could occur in fiscal 26. Is the benefit, I'm just trying to understand where the benefit comes. Is that replacing higher cost debt with lower cost debt?
Exactly. With our financial advisors, they'll run some scenarios to see when the bonds are callable, which will be in 2026 for the 2016 general obligation bonds. They'll run the scenarios and see what it looks like if we can go out for any refunding, and they will. We have to have a certain percentage in order to make it worthwhile. And just a note to point that this will not increase the length of the loans; they will still have the same expiration date. But
Right.
as I've noted later in this, that we have refunded before, and we've received, I think, over $1.4 million when we refunded the 2012 general obligation bonds, and $787,000 when we refunded the 2016 bonds. So we do look at that because, again, that reduces our annual debt service without extending it over the years.
Just to follow up, is there a typical period that these bonds are non-refundable, after which they become refundable?
It's usually 10 years. So
10
for the
years,
first
okay.
10 years, they're not callable.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so again, looking at some of the debt that has been authorized but has not been issued yet. Again, the belt filter press, so $4.5 million approved at the annual town meeting, and we'll be looking to supplement that with $1.3 million from the wastewater capitalization fund. Again, items that we will not have to borrow for. The Center for Active Living coming up. Oh, sorry.
Jeff.
Alex, just one comment. On August 18th, the town received a letter from the awarding Chatham a subsidy of $1.25 million for this project? I was
Yes.
unaware of that.
Yeah, sorry.
That's tremendous news.
It just came in, it was breaking news. The town manager handed it to me as we were getting the agenda report ready. So that is money that we will not have to borrow. So that will come right off the borrowing. So that, I didn't have time to adjust the charts because, again, we don't have those schedules, but that will come down. So that's, yeah.
Yeah, it basically replaces the 1.3 that we're going to authorize to transfer, if you will.
Right, so instead of borrowing 4.5, we'll be borrowing, 3.25. So that's a savings to the taxpayer. So we can look at that and see what that will do as well.
That's from the Water Protection Fund.
That's from the Cape Cod Islands Water Protection Fund, yes.
Jeez, that's great. Okay, thank you. Wonderful news.
Yep, breaking news. Thank you for pointing that out. I skimmed right over that.
That's okay.
Okay, moving on for the Chatham Center for Active Living, the CFAL. Again, September 18th is a special town meeting, and this will be presented. Again, we don't know the amount, so we've put in both the tax impact for either the amount as presented at the 10.9 million, or if the board decides to move forward with the alternates for the 11.06 million. And those charts are, and I will be talking about this later in my slides, so for the public, you will be able to see this as well. But again, the estimated impact based on FY 2024 valuations and the FY 2024 tax rate estimated until Department of Revenue certifies it of $3.57 per $1,000 of valuation. The impact would be 9 cents in the first year and reducing to 4 cents in the final year of borrowing for a 20-year loan at 5%. And again, this is subject to change once we issue, but that's our best projections right now. And then, again, we'll note this in the presentation for the Center for Active Living. And let's see. So again, principal payments are made once a year. Interest is twice a year. We've put in the borrowing schedules with our best projections starting with year one. Probably will not go out to borrow. The earliest would be FY 2026 that this would impact the tax rate. And it might only be half a year when we go out because, again, we don't always borrow the full amount at one time. It might be programmed in where we'd borrow half of it 1 year, and then when the project's complete, we would borrow the remaining amount. So it might not be all in 1 year, not one hit at one time. But worst case scenario, we project it to hit at one time so the taxpayer is aware. So in that chart on page 9, this again will be in the presentation later for the public if you want to follow along at home. We have projected out, we show existing debt, which is a blue column, waterfront infrastructure, and that moves out through the program, the projects that are estimated to continue on. Wastewater next phases are the green and white. Again, every 2 years, we're looking to authorize debt as we keep that wastewater project going. And then the Council on Aging / CFAL in the purple, if it is approved, is probably hitting, beginning slightly into 2026 and then ramping up into 2028 and then declining thereafter. And the transfer station is also, that's their black and white checker box there. So again, moving on to the well treatment plant, wells 5 and 8, we've talked about the state revolving fund or the Clean Water Trust, so that has been approved. It's on the intended use program and is eligible for the 2% loans, paid for again by water debt. And then on page 10, I do have the water debt showing the existing debt in blue, wells 10 and 11 hitting in FY 2024, which is this current fiscal year, declining, and then the green is the wells 5 and 8 treatment plant, again, a 20-year loan beginning in 2027. So, and again, as we look to see what grants might be available for PFAS treatment and 0% loans, these might have to be adjusted because they're in at 2% right now, not at 0%. Our debt policies, there's been question about the town's financial policies do include debt policies. And again, they state that any borrowing for capital improvements will be confined to items greater than $250,000 with a useful life of 5 or more years. So obviously, all these items in here meet that criteria. And then also, we've talked about our debt capacity. So our financial policies state that the town will keep total debt at under 5% of our EQV, which is equalized valuation, as last measured, which was in 2022. So, and the limit is annually, we update that annually as we issue or rescind or pay off debt. But again, the most recent EQV was FY 2022, and that was 8.7 million. 5% of that, I'm sorry, 8.7 billion. 5% of that is $438,438,940. And our long-term debt outstanding is just over 90 million. Our short-term debt for the Clean Water Trust is 40.3 million, leaving our authorized unissued as 45.4 million. So total debt right now is 176,010,227. We back out the water debt because that is outside the debt limit, and that's $12,591,045 to give us available capacity to issue debt of $275,019,758. So we have capacity to issue debt. I do not foresee the town issuing $275 million in debt in any single year or even over probably 10 years. I see a question.
Dean, go ahead.
Thank you, Alex. I just wanted to ask this question. So this calculation, which leads to the $275 million result, is based on FY22 EQV.
Yes.
The assessor's report indicates that the current valuation for FY24 is $11.6 billion. When will we know what the EQV for FY24 is?
The Department of Revenue will notify us of that. What they do is that they go through, once all cities and towns have submitted their tax rates, and they do it every 2 years. So the last one was done in 2020, 2022, and it will be in 2024. So it lags a bit behind.
Does the EQV typically come out lower than the initial figure of the valuation?
We could look back, and in your packet, I know you had the valuations from going all the way back when we had the tax classification hearing to compare the value of the town for FY 2022 compared to what the 8.7 is here. But this number came from the Department of Revenue, and it's what they use.
Yeah, well, what I'm getting at is if an EQV of 8.7 billion produces 275 million, if the figure is of the EQV is something closer to 11 billion, that bottom line is going to be much higher.
It would go up, yes.
Significantly.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. The other point is, this is an excellent report. I'm sure I thank Mr. Dykens for requesting this. I assume you're going to be presenting a copy of this to the Finance Committee for their information. I certainly would encourage it.
Yes, I can. Certainly, I will do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, if I may, I took the opportunity to go back and answer Dean's question on the total assessed valuation as presented in the earlier tax classification report was actually less than what is shown here as the 2022 EQV. It was about 8.2 billion.
Jeff?
But the new valuation we saw was 11 billion.
Yes.
I've seen that, yeah.
Yeah, 11 billion, 11.6.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Is Alex done?
Okay, so again, the financial policies for the debt policy does state another, the town will endeavor to keep the total tax-supported debt service, i.e. net of debt exclusions and self-supporting debt, to 10% of total general fund revenues or less. So our general fund revenues, not including taxes, were $9,275,194. Our non-exempt debt at this time is $198,750. So meaning that 10% would be the $927,000, which we're well within our financial policies for that. Again, having the valuations just come in last week, we've updated the fiscal impact. So now each penny increase to the tax rate raises $116,099.
Okay.
So again, in conclusion, and I have this in this in your packet, questions on future debt, such as additional wells, water treatment plants, the school infrastructure improvements in Phase 2 of the wastewater project. We do update the 5-year capital plan, and we do include anything and everything debt-related capital projects, whether it's debt or pay-as-you-go. And we have included the school improvements in that, even though the town will be responsible for Chatham Elementary School. But as we increase the local room occupancy tax by the 2%, 1% of that will go to support the Chatham Elementary School, and 1% will go to support affordable, attainable housing. So those are also two receipts reserved for appropriation accounts that can offset any potential borrowing or pay for capital funds rather than having to borrow. And again, we look at any future grants that we have that are available to offset any borrowing costs. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, Jeff and then Dean.
Comments in general. Thank you very much, Alex. And, I requested this agenda item because I thought it would be timely to level set the board and level set the public and reset, if you will, some context for any additional debt we might be entertaining in the future for the Center for Active Living, et cetera. So an excellent report. I'm not going to double down on the Center for Active Living at this point because I know you have slides forthcoming. But what your report did for me was it really grounded me in the fact that we have really conservative assumptions about debt and how we take on debt, how much debt we allowed ourselves to take on, and that we've, for years, have really done, I think, a wonderful job in this town with managing our debt and our debt service. Now, I do hope we do get the opportunity in 2026 to actually refund some of those bonds, but I'm fearful that interest rates will still be remaining high enough so that it may not come to pass because our debt is already so well financed, if you will. I just think you did a great job. It's a great package. It's full of great information, and it's a piece of work I'm going to carry around with me because I can refer to it, all along. The other thing I wanted to level set was SRAC's. I think there were some fears in SRAC during their presentation that we were really not able to service the continuation of the wastewater program that we have here in town. And as I read through these numbers and I look forward, I'm fairly convinced that the town's going to be able to service that debt going forward. And I wanted to make the point that the assumptions they brought to bear in that presentation, I think, really shortened the life of the debt that we would take on. I think they were looking at the next 10 years, and in fact, we would likely bond those monies to complete the wastewater program for the next 20 years, if you will. So I think they perhaps overburdened their projections. I just wanted to level set for them where we were with respect to our wastewater program. So, and then you've done that. So I thank you very much. And I hope that was clarifying for SRAC. We have some members here this evening that were, and Peter was here early. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Dean, then Shereen, and then Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alex, just one question on the 10% of the total general fund revenues. So you came up with $927,000, right?
Yep.
So what does that compare to? What is the actual debt service, tax-supported debt service? I assume that's an annual figure.
That's the amount that's outstanding right now for our non-exempt debt. So again, most of our debt is debt excluded, except for the water fund, which is paid for by water rates. So this is why when we go to town meeting, we have the ballot vote to exclude the debt from the levy limit.
Yeah, what I'm getting at, though, is this 927,000 is the limit that we should not go above.
Correct.
What is the number that we're actually incurring in annual debt service versus this limit?
Oh, in annual debt service, and actually that's the limit for the total amount of the debt, not the debt service. So the total amount of debt that can be issued that's non-excluded. I don't think I made myself clear.
Yeah, I'm not understanding it.
The rest of our debt is tax exempt, I think, Alex, is what you're saying.
I think that the amount of debt service right now that is It's 100, actually on page 2, the land acquisition, 196, 250, and I think there's another $2,500 out there, so that would make up that difference. That is,
So it's way below the 927,000. That's all I really wanted
Yep.
to understand. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Alex, I so appreciate this report. It really helps make sense of everything, and I hope, and I encourage the public to really read this before they go to town meeting or into any town meeting when it comes to, approving any authorization of funding. Additionally, some information for SHRAC is that the Cape and Islands Municipal Leaders Association has been working for about a year on the issues around the Title V, and particularly around some of the funding for the Water Protection Fund. We have met with Lieutenant Governor Driscoll on several occasions and expressed our concern about how much money it's going to cost to fund projects on the Cape. And I'm pretty confident that we will see a little more influx into that fund as we move forward, because the county is also working on it as well. It's been a really good opportunity with this new administration to be able to have those conversations and really express what the needs are for the Cape. But I want to double back, and I want to just say thank you so much for all the good work you did on this and what you've done in your career here. This is kind of like a shining moment to report out like this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I want to, first of all, endorse everything you just heard from everybody, and in particular what Shireen just said. I haven't been around to watch you for 13 years, but in the year and a half I have been around, I've been extraordinarily impressed. And this report is sort of the, the cherry on top of the sundae. The thing that's impressive to me is all the top line numbers that reflect the policies are themselves very much generate a lot of confidence that the entire financial profile of the town is extremely well managed and very comfortable, at the same time that money is being invested in needed infrastructure and projects and buildings and things that we need. But the thing that doesn't come through as clearly unless you go through the way you just have this report and look at all of the little one-off opportunities to reduce the cost of our overall financing through subsidies and grants and zero interest loans and refundings and so forth. And it appears that you don't miss an opportunity to do that. And that is even more reassuring than the top line things that I look at and that you're showing us. I'd like to conclude with one question. In the paragraph on conclusion, you've got a parenthetical that includes a bunch of what you call special revenue funds, which appear to me to be basically funds that are available in lieu of debt issuance. And you can correct me if I misapprehend that. But do you have a ballpark notion of what the total current amount is that's in the sum of all of those special revenue funds?
Well, the first one is easy. The wastewater has over capitalization, $6 million. Waterway user fee revolving fund, I believe, is $2 million right now. And then the Chatham Elementary School receipts reserve appropriation and attainable housing don't have any money right now. Those were just authorized to increase as of July 1st, 2023, and we will get the first payment into those on September 30th.
And is there anything in the attainable housing, what I'll call RIFRA?
No, again, that's from the 1% from the expanded rooms tax. So,
Okay.
So we will get that on September 30th.
Roughly speaking, we have $8 million of reserve apart from everything else.
In those funds, yes.
In those funds, yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Thanks, Alex. Very much appreciated.
All right, any final thoughts?
Mr. Chair?
We,
I have just a thought on that presentation.
okay, I'm going to make an exception. I might not get criticized for doing it. We don't usually do the public comment during the body. I will make an exception. Please, Joanne, come on up. And I miss the old ways, but I'm trying to follow the current protocols.
She is the
He's
vice
vice
chair of
chair.
the finance committee.
I know.
Thank you for making the exception, Mr. Chairman. I do appreciate it, and I do forget that rule. How fortunate are we in the town of Chatham to have this kind of financial director who's able to present a report like this so clearly, so easy to understand, and so important. In my years of public service, I have never seen a report this thorough, this momentous for the town to receive. And I just want to thank Alex not only for this, but her years of service to us. She's exceptional. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Well spoken. Well, Alex, thank you very much. Unless there's any final questions or comments, move on. All right. Okay, we're going to kick into the September 18th, 2023 special town meeting warrant article review. First item is to review the article and vote on a recommendation for the prior fiscal year bill payment appropriations. So, Alex, back to you.
Back to me. Okay, I do have some slides on this because we had late breaking news on the prior year bills. So again, just to remind the public, this special town meeting is September 18th, 2023 at 6 p.m. at the middle school. So Article 1, prior year bills, and we did send out an update. We received a bill today for $240, which is the last one listed here for Carewell, for which we had encumbered $200. However, it came in at $240, so we need to request an additional $40 to meet that invoice. So we have 4 invoices that are looking to get paid under the prior year bills, $194.27 in total. And right now, the funding source, if I can get free cash certified in time for special town meeting, the funding source will be coming from free cash. If not, we will be looking at an alternative funding source. The Community Development Department encumbered a number of funds. However, they received a grant for some of those to offset that, so they do have some availability to use those encumbered funds for this purpose. But I want to ask town meeting because it was, again, from another department.
All right, questions or comments from the board? Dean?
So Alex, this requires a 9/10 vote at town meeting?
Yes, special town meeting, it's a 9/10 vote.
Yeah, I thought I had read 4/5 somewhere, but 9/10 is the correct.
It's 4/5 at annual town meeting, 9/10 at special.
Oh, okay, wasn't aware of that difference. So, Mr. Chairman, I move that we place the prior year bills article on the warrant as presented.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any further comments? All those in favor, Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member DeCastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell?
Aye.
Select Board Member Metter says aye. All right,
Mr. Chairman, I move that we recommend this article to town meeting.
do I hear a second? Okay, further discussion? All those in favor, Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member DeCastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell?
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. All right. Next,
Okay, next, moving forward.
FY budget adjustment transfers.
Yes, current year budget adjustment and transfers, and this is for the current fiscal year FY 2024, which has started. But as you might recall, Volunteer Park Playground is being rebuilt, and we went out to bid for a replacement of the playground, and we received one bid, I believe, and it was for $354,522, which included the base, the poured-in-place ground, as well as the ADA pathway. When the project was presented to this Community Preservation Committee, they had requested the poured-in-place surface rather than wood chips, thinking that it was more equitable, it was easier for ADA compliant, and a better surface. So they increased the funding request from $250,000 to $300,000 to cover that. What was not included in that estimate was the ADA pathway, which is required by law to get handicapped or disabled people to the playground. So when the bids came in, the decision was made to see if we could seek additional funding to have both the ADA compliant pathway as well as the poured in place and redo the volunteer park playground. We could award it without the poured in place surface, which would be wood chips, and that would be a total cost of $309,000. But then again, the goal would be to have the poured in place done at a later date, and that would probably cost more money at a later date rather than having everything mobilized all at once. Plus, it would displace the use of the playground while you're putting the poured in place in after the fact. So we're looking to transfer $60,000 from the fire department expense budget to the recreation and beaches expense budget to supplement the funding for the volunteer park playground project. I spoke with Chief Devano, who said that he does not need the $60,000. It was a holdover from last year under the capital outlay for leases. The lease had been fulfilled last year in FY 2023 oversight when we came through. However, he does need some of that money to supplement some injury on duty firefighters, so we can't take the whole amount of the 203, but the $60,000 is available for this purpose.
All right. Questions or comments from the board? Jeff?
Well, this is great news. I'm certainly going to vote to place it and recommend it. And thank you, Chief Devano, for being so understanding. What is poured in place?
It's a molded.
It's kind of like a little, it's a soft, well, not really soft, but it's like a rubber surface. I don't know if you've ever been on a playground. I just was on one not too long ago. And it's a lot, the wood chips, if you're in a wheelchair, they can catch on those. It's not easy to bring something over that has wheels, where the poured in place is a solid surface, a little forgiving, so it's kind of soft. So if somebody were to fall, it's not concrete, obviously, or asphalt.
Well, I'm thrilled because I've raised this issue a couple of times. It's good to see it come forward as an agenda item and that we're moving on it, and hopefully we'll get the vote at town meeting and onward and upward. So I would make a motion to vote to place the current year budget adjustment transfers on the warrant.
Do I hear a second? Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor? Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member Nacastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell?
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye.
And Mr. Chairman, I vote to recommend a transfer of $60,000 from Public Safety Fire Department Capital Outlay, account number 01-220-0580-5800 to Community Services, Recreation and Beaches, Capital Outlay, account number 01-650-0580-5800.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member DeCastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell?
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. All right.
Mr. Chairman, does that, Jill, does this suffice to recommend the first vote that we, the vote to play, the article that we voted to place? Does this vote that we just took just now suffice to cover that?
We typically take two votes, one to place and one to recommend.
Right.
Did the motion have both of that?
It did.
Then we should be fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Borrowing rescissions.
Borrowing rescissions. Again, I think as we noted earlier, in my earlier presentation, that we have a couple of small borrowing authorizations that we are requesting to rescind. Since town meeting authorizes borrowing, they must also authorize any rescission of so again, two articles, one for $25,000, which is from May 11th of 2009, and that was for road takings for L Street and Skyway. And we authorized $220,000. We've borrowed $195,000, so we're asking to rescind $25,000 from that authorization. And then the fire station construction, $10,341,635, authorized at town meeting in October 2013, and there is $16,635 that was not needed and has not been borrowed, so we're asking to rescind that.
All right, questions or comments from the
Yes.
board? Yes.
So this amount of money indicates that these two projects came in under budget.
Yes.
So I think that should be noted
Yep.
in today. So I'm going to make a motion.
Please.
I move that the town vote, no, sorry. I move to place the article borrowing rescissions on the warrant.
Okay, second. Okay, additional comments? All those in favor? Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member Nacastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell?
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Motion to recommend?
Mr. Chair, I move to recommend the article borrowing rescissions.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor say, Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member Nacastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell?
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. All right. Just pause for a moment. So items C1D through C1G, I will now turn over to our Vice Chair, Mr. Select Board Member Shell, and I will return for C2 when we close the warrant. I'll be back. And just for the records, this is due to my standing conflict on this project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item for consideration is the articles that deal with the new center for, the first article is that deals with the new Center for Active Living, facility design and construction, 1610 Main Street with tax impact and debt projection, et cetera. I think there are essentially three elements identified in the in the staff memo, which was excellent. One is the identification of the fact and the implications of the vote on the debt exclusion question on the ballot at annual town election on May 11th. Two is the debt, the impact on the financial impact, and three is the question of what the amount that we should put in the blanks is, which basically deals with the question of the inclusion of the features that would qualify this as the as an emergency evacuation center. I think the explanation with respect to the legal opinions that were sought by both the town clerk and the town manager are fairly clear in the staff memo, so I will pass that to board discussion and ask Alex if she would favor us with her report on the financial implications of this article.
Okay. Yeah, we have some slides here that will show the estimated tax impact for the Center for Active Living, should it be approved at town meeting. And we have, the first slide shows it, the projected costs of the $10,961,961. And this is at an interest rate of 5% for a 20-year term. And this is the impact to a single-family home with the value listed on the left-hand side, the first column. So we've listed the value for a home valued at $2 million, 1.5, 1.2, 1 million, 800,000, and 500,000. So the tax impact for the first year would be 9 cents on the tax rate. And then for the values of that home, we're showing for the $2 million home with the current FY 2024 valuation and FY 2024 tax rate of $3.57. The year one increase for the $2 million home would be $188.84. For a $1 million home, it would be $111.53. And for a $500,000 home, it would be $55.27 per year. And then for the final year, and again, year 20, the tax impact would be 4 cents. For the $2 million home, $98.90 impact to the tax bill. $1 million would be just under $50, so $49.45, and $500,000, $24.73. So again, for years 1 through 3, the impact is estimated to be 9 cents. Years 4 through 7, 8 cents. Years 8 through 10, 7 cents. Years 11 through 13, 6 cents. Years 14 through 17, 5 cents. And the final years at 4 cents, again, based on the FY 2024 valuation and a 5% interest rate. With the alternative, which brings the projected cost up to $11,064,661, again, interest rate at 5% for 20 years. The impact, again, is 9 cents on the tax rate, a little, some incremental differences, but for a home valued at $2,190.61, home valued at $1,095.30, and a home valued at $500,047.65 for the first year increase. And then again, for the final years, $2 million home, $99.83, $1 million home, $49.92, and a $500,000 home, $24.96. And we've listed in there the incremental differences for the $1.5 million, a $1.2 million, and an $800,000 home as well. And again, subject to change, and this is if we borrow the entire amount. If there was a lesser amount to be borrowed, these numbers would change. And I don't know if you wanted to talk about the estimated debt projections. We touched on this earlier as well, but again, that's our existing debt. And then in 2030, 2031 would probably be the peak of the debt should everything be borrowed at the full amount estimated, and it all hits the tax rate in 1 year. As I mentioned earlier, oftentimes when we go to borrow, we will borrow half of an amount or amount certain as the project progresses through construction progresses. We might borrow, say, $5 million 1 year, and then the remaining amount after the project is completed, once we know the final cost of the project. You don't want to risk borrowing the whole amount up front, because then if you don't expend the whole amount, you're subject to arbitrage, and you really can't do that. You have to, when you borrow, you have to have the project underway, and it has to be completed within certain milestones of the amount that you've borrowed.
And by arbitrage, you mean you can't borrow low and invest high with bonded money?
Exactly. I know this came up a couple of years ago. So people said, oh, the interest rates are so good right now. Why don't we borrow? Well, if you borrow, then you have to complete the construction within 2 years.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the board before we lose, I guess we won't lose Alex, but before she steps away?
So,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mike.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, no, for me, it's, we have 11 million versus 11 million. It's 10,961 versus 1164 between the two. I mean, the dollar differential is negligible in terms of the overall cost of the project. So it's just a question of whether or not we believe that's a good, location for evacuation, shelter or whatever.
Mike?
Yeah, go ahead, Dean.
Are you done, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, we're going to have to take a vote to place as well as a vote to recommend. Is that correct, Joe?
Yes.
Okay. So, I think it's self-evident what we're going to vote in terms of placing something. And I think it's also self-evident that there's going to be an affirmative recommendation for that article. The question is how much. And the differential is really what is it, 90,000 total if you did the
102.
102. If you included the room for the cots and the showers, the 2 showers. So I'm not sure that this is the perfect or ideal location for an emergency shelter. There are a lot of issues. There are other locations. People have mentioned the community center, but we can also think of the middle school, which has a big gymnasium and multiple showers. However, I would prefer to let that issue be decided by the special town meeting and not by the select board. In order to make that happen, though, I think we have to include the dollar amount, that 100,000+, in the warrant article. I did speak this morning with the town moderator and asked him whether, if those numbers were not included, would it be possible for someone to add them from the floor? And he said they could only be added if the voters were sufficiently warned that that topic could come up for consideration. I think myself that the safest way to do that would be to include those numbers in the dollar amount and put it forward, let town meeting make the decision on whether they want to include the emergency shelter or not. They can always take it out. They can't add, but they can take it out. So those are my thoughts on it.
I can't see, Shireen, were
Mike,
you going to
yeah.
speak? Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead, please.
So a couple of things that I would ask a question about, and I'm not sure it can be answered tonight, maybe it can. I think this is a good location for an emergency center because it is centrally located to the town. If you look at the map, that it's new construction, it's, you know, you can say, yes, maybe the community center, but it doesn't have a kitchen, and it would take probably more than $102,000 to kick it off as an emergency center. Saying that, my question is it possible, or is it practical to go ahead and separate out that funding amount out in a separate article? And how does anybody feel about that?
Well, I'll speak to that. Jill may have a thought as well. To me, this is not, it's not so much a decision to put the emergency evacuation center in West Chatham or any place else. It is a decision to include a facility that gives you the option that you can make use of or not as you wish. And the cost of that option is $102,000. And so from my perspective, I accept Dean's suggestion that if somebody wants to make a motion at special town meeting to reduce the number in order to exclude that, that's well within their rights, and that would then mean, if that passed, that we would be building the CFAL without that facility. Without that feature, assuming that it passed. I don't think that it means that we can't decide that we're going to put it somewhere else. We can compare the cost of putting it at the middle school or the community center or wherever, but we can't make that comparison if we don't at least put this up on the table as part of the proposal for what, as Chief Tavano identified as a 1% increment to the cost of the building.
Mike, just to follow up, and may I suggest to the IT team that they keep both us and you, on a screen so you can see us raise our hand.
Okay.
Basically, I understand the logic, and I can agree with that. I just wanted to throw it out there as a possibility. But when you think about the opportunity side of it versus the actual, then I think I can agree with what Dean's suggesting. And thank you.
Mr. Chair, go ahead.
Yeah, so no, please go ahead, Jill.
Go ahead, Jill, and
Okay.
I'll jump in.
So what town meeting would be authorizing through the motion is an amount that would include the elements for an emergency evacuation shelter. If the board at some point after town meeting gets approved, you can make a decision whether you want to pursue that or not. We can't add it to, as Selectman Nicastro had mentioned, we can't add it to the warrant, but it's essentially a not to exceed number. we wouldn't borrow for it if the selectmen or Board of Selectmen had a policy decision not to put it there. I mean, at this point, it would be 4 members deciding that, when there needs to be some discussion about moving forward with an emergency evacuation center. But I do want to add that I know we talk about it as a center, but it's also adding showers to companion bathrooms. And we recently had an incident at the existing Council on Aging Center for Active Living that we could have really used a shower to have to address something. So I know it's focused on that and it's labeled as an alternate, but I think having showers as an option isn't really, I think it's something that we might need to think about in the future. And there are no showers at the community center, there are no showers at the elementary school. So keeping it focused on 1610, I just wanted to put that out there for the board.
I appreciate that, Jill, thank you.
Yeah, if I might, Mike, I appreciate.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate
go
that,
ahead,
Jill.
sorry.
And I would vote for Mr. Shell's approach. Put the 11,064,000 out there, and if folks wanted to, take it down by 102,000 because they were uncomfortable with that site as an evacuation center, then so be it. I can certainly live with that, so I would suggest that would be the approach that I would favor going forward to town meeting. The amount is negligible, and I look at it, for $100,000, you've got a potential for an evacuation shelter that will shelter up to 80 people that we don't currently have for short money. Including a shower, et cetera. So I think it's value added. It may not be the exact perfect location. It is centrally located, but there may be other better locations. But I think we'd be quasi-negligent if we didn't forward that amount and have the town look at it and make their decision, therefrom. So I would support the 11,064,000, and then folks wanted to vote less than that and not have it there, then so be it. But I think the most important thing is getting the CFAL there. That's the most important thing. I don't want this debate to detract from, getting the vote for the CFAL, okay? Those are my thoughts, Mike, thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. If I could just add, there's been a lot of focus in discussing this on prior conversations responding to what's been referred to as 5 years of requests for such a overnight warming center. And the emphasis there seems to be that the concern was staffing. I wasn't part of those conversations, and I don't doubt the accuracy of that. But having been involved in conversations with the chief and having been privy to some of the work that was done that Chief Tavano referred to in the August 22 town hall, there was a pretty serious look done, I believe under his or the former chief's supervision, to see what was possible at some of the other alternatives, the community center, the middle school, I don't recall whether the elementary school was included, but in order to put yourself in the same position that we would be in if those showers and the cot room were included in the CFAL that we're talking about, I'm pretty confident that you are talking about a major undertaking and substantially more money to be able to have that option at another location. So I think talking about locations before you know what the financial comparison is maybe putting the cart before the horse a little bit. So if there's no further comment from the board, I would invite a motion on placing the article. I do want to note that I believe Jill indicated that there is some more work to be done on the explanation in support of the article that we would be placing. I think the article is X, the number is appropriately drafted, as I understand it, Jill. I do want to note that I have one substantive comment with respect to the explanation that supports this article. And basically that comment is adding a sentence, which I think probably I can best explain by simply reading it. The sentence I want to add is this is in the history of the development of this project. A special town meeting was held January 4, 2020. A special town meeting held January 4, 2020 authorized the acquisition by purchase or donation or otherwise of 1610 and 0 Main Street and the expenditure of $130,000 for a feasibility study and completion of a concept design and cost estimate for a new COA facility at 1610 Main Street. And the reason I want to include that is that was a vote held at town meeting. The first part of it, the acquisition, was approved by a vote of over 400 in favor and approximately 225 opposed. And the second part of it, the $130,000, was approved by that town meeting, again, by what the moderator declared to be a substantial majority. I think that's important information for the community to have before the special town meeting. With that, I would invite a motion to place the article.
Okay, Mike, this is Jeff. I move to place the article seeking $11,064,661 in funding for the final design and construction of a new Center for Active Living at 1610 0 Main Street on the September 18th, 2023 special town meeting warrant.
Second.
Any further comment? Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Nicastro.
Aye.
And the Vice Chair votes aye. Thank you very much.
Mr. Vice Chair, I move to recommend the approval of the article seeking $11,064,661 in funding for the final design and construction of a new Center for Active Living at 1610 0 Main Street to the September 18th, 2023 special town meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Any further conversation? Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Nicastro.
Aye.
And the Vice Chair votes aye. Thank you very much. The next article is the article approving the zoning bylaw change with respect to 1610 and 0 Main Street. This article has been approved and recommended by the Planning Board pursuant to our request. And I would open the meeting for conversation or discussion of this motion, of this article.
Mr. Vice Chair,
Yes.
the board voted to place this previously, is that correct, Joe?
Yes.
So
Yes,
this
it
is the
is.
recommendation of the planning board, and I'm, unless, and we can have discussion on the motion, but I'll offer this motion. I move that the board vote to recommend zoning bylaw amendment / map change, semicolon, 1610 and 0 Main Street properties with contingencies.
Second.
Any further discussion? Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Nicastro.
Aye.
And the Vice Chair votes aye. The next article is the declaration of surplus town property at 193 Stony Hill Road. This is the article that would declare 193 Stony Hill Road as surplus and dedicated to development, sale, and/or disposition for affordable, attainable housing. subject to the condition, obviously, that the 1610 authorization is passed by special town meeting. Any comments? I would.
Mr.
Yeah,
Vice
go
Chair,
ahead.
Mr. Vice
Yeah.
Chair,
Yeah.
I move to change the purpose for which the real property located at 193.
I'm sorry, if I could
Go
interrupt
ahead.
you, that I brought to the attention of Jill, the suggested motion number 1 does not conform
Okay,
to what's in the article itself. And if I may, rather than get bollocksed up here giving you comments, I would make the motion with the correct language.
Yes,
Or
so
you
just
could
so you
read
can
it.
follow along, Mr. Chair, so Vice Chair will be reading the motion that's included in the
yes, we have it right
motion
here.
of the article versus in your staff report.
Right.
We have
So the
that
motion, yeah, well, then go ahead. Go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, okay. All right, Mr. Vice Chair, I move that the town vote pursuant to General Law, Chapter 40, Sections 15 and 15A, to change the purpose for which the real property located at 193 Stony Hill Road, Assessors Parcel 14H-14A-E28A, containing approximately 39,496 square feet plus or minus, is held from its present use as a Council on Aging Senior Center to land held for the purpose of development, sale, or disposition, I should say, for affordable, attainable workforce housing, and to authorize the development, sale, and/or disposition thereof by the Select Board upon such terms as said board shall deem to be in the town's interest, provided that the change in purpose and development, sale, and/or disposition authorization approved hereby shall be subject to and contingent upon special town meeting approval of Article 5 of this warrant.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, can I just ask, what's the difference between what was read just now and what was, I just want to understand that I'm not challenging anything.
On page 1, the words development, sale, and/or disposition were left out.
Okay.
Yep.
And also, should we not also, because I think we did this at the annual town meeting, in the 5th line of the motion, as was read, after, where it says Council on Aging Senior Center, put in parentheses, now known as
Yes.
Center for Active Living,
Yes.
in
That's a
parentheses.
good,
And
excellent.
also, it's the motion that you made, Mr. Dykens.
Will be Article 7.
Is it that the town vote, or is it the board vote? It's the town, okay, the town. All right, I'm okay, I'm sorry, I withdraw what I was about to ask.
Yeah, but we should put in parentheses currently known as
Yeah.
Center for Active Living.
So this is a motion to place this, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yep.
And it's been seconded as
Yes.
such, okay, thank you.
So it's the unanimous sense of the board that our vote addressed the motion as amended by Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay.
Did we vote?
We haven't voted.
Mike, we need to vote.
Okay. Mr. Dykens,
Aye.
Ms. Davis,
Aye.
Mr. Nacastro,
Aye.
and the vice chair says aye. Thank you.
We need a motion to recommend.
We need a motion to recommend, Mike.
I invite a motion to recommend.
Mr. Vice Chairman, I recommend the article on the September 18th, 2023 special town meeting warrant as just enumerated.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
And the vice chair says aye.
Just to be clear, there was a motion to place. I mean, motion to recommend, excuse me.
Motion
excuse
to
me.
recommend.
Motion to recommend, excuse me, yep.
Motion to recommend.
Yep.
And then finally, the last article is an article to authorize the sum of $75,000 to be used for architectural design and engineering services for the redesign renovation of the existing building at and/or redevelopment of the property at 193 Stony Hill to accommodate affordable and attainable housing units, subject to approval of the Article 5. Any discussion? I would invite a motion to place.
Mr. Vice Chair, I move to place this funding article for architectural design and engineering services for affordable and attainable housing at 193 Stony Hill Road on September 18th, 2023, special town meeting warrant.
Second.
All those in favor, Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
And the vice chair says aye. And a recommendation, motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to recommend approval of this article to the September 18th, 2023, special town meeting.
Second.
And all those in favor, Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
And the vice chair says aye. Thank you very much. I think that concludes my responsibilities in the chair. Thank you for indulging the confusion generated by my not being there with you in person.
Thank you, Mike, for taking over. Now we have the closing of the warrant, including ordering of articles and the motion assignment. So, Jill, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in your packet, you have what we call the scorecard for the special town meeting warrant. So in it, we'll need for the board to confirm the ordering of the warrant as we have it here, or we can alter that, and also for you to assign the motion by designees from the select board.
Thoughts on the board?
Well, I think Mike ought to introduce number 5.
That's fine with me.
I agree.
I accept.
I'd like to do number 7.
Any other preferences? Otherwise, we'll go in order of officers if that's okay.
No preference.
I was just going to say, I think the order of the items is correct. We take
Yeah.
the financial stuff
So-
first.
Yeah, no, the only question I have, Corey, is do you have any reservation about doing any of the 4 1610 and related articles?
I don't, but maybe just for what it's worth, I'll do Article 4. Keep it clean.
Corey?
Okay.
I'll do the belt press.
And you want to do the first article, too?
Sure.
So for the 2 remaining, 6 and 8, as it relates to the Center for Active Living, Jeff or Dean, do you have a
Sure,
preference?
I'll do anything. 6?
I'm okay either one.
Yep.
If you,
Dean, you do 6?
I'll do 6, you can do 8.
I could do 8, okay. Yep. Hope we get there.
Okay. So it looks like we'll have, for number 1, we'll have Corey, number 2, Mike, if you're okay with that. And then
Yeah, that's
3,
fine, yep.
borrowing rescissions will be Jeff.
Jeff?
Yep.
Okay.
Then number 4, belt filter press transfer, Corey. 5 for the Center for Active Living, the first article, Mike. The second one for zoning amendment would be Dean. The surplus of 193 Stony Hill would be Shereen, and then Jeff will close it up with number 8.
Okay.
So then we'll need a formal motion to close the warrant and authorize the use of electronic signatures.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, please.
I move that the Select Board close the September 18th, 2023 special town meeting warrant, approve the use of electronic signatures to sign the special town meeting warrant, and endorse the plan to make the warrant widely available to voters. And I'll say, that's the motion, I'll say parenthetically, the plan is outlined in the staff memo that includes, just for the benefit of the public, distribution of the warrants to all municipal buildings, post offices approved by the United States Postal Service, Eldridge Public Library for pickup by voters and by town staff at the transfer station and other businesses with permission. The warrant will also be posted to the town website for those who prefer a digital copy. It's not required to be mailed to every voter.
Correct.
Second?
Second, okay. Further discussion? All those in favor, Select Board Member Shell?
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member Nacastro?
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Okay, the warrant is closed. Okay. Let's see, where are we here? Consider Select Board Member meeting schedule. There is nothing particular in the packet. I just wanted to throw this up for discussion. And this stems from a bunch of different things. One, coming forward with a special town meeting, some things that, I mean, we clearly have a lot of items on our future agendas to work on, but just trying to balance our time, staff time, try to be efficient with our scheduling, that maybe we do entertain an every other week schedule for September, October. Once we get closer to the budget season, clearly, we're going to keep going back to a regular meeting schedule. And if something particular comes up, we certainly would have a meeting. But we have the forum on the 12th. We are scheduled for the meeting on the 19th. We have our budget summit on the 17th. So with those already locked in, we could do an every other week schedule, starting the 19th, the 3rd if we go into October. But I just wanted to throw it up for discussion, get everyone's feedback and thoughts. And Shireen, please go ahead.
Thanks for bringing this forward, Corey. I know that we had one citizen that was concerned about, the substance of our meeting tonight and how much we had to do if we have these every other week schedules. But I'm fine with a biweekly schedule with the idea that we know that every other week we may have a meeting if we find that we, number one, have something very important we need to discuss, or number two, the agenda load is getting heavy for the staff and whatnot. But I do appreciate the idea that, every other week is a doable thing. We've done it during the summer. We've done it in past where we've had it intended for the summer and we've ended up meeting most of the summer. So, I think that flexibility is there. So I'm in favor of a biweekly schedule as it stands. But if we go to weekly schedule, it's not a big deal either. I'm committed to my position on the board, so whatever happens.
I definitely think we're all committed. I'm just wondering if we want to do this for the month of September, do it September, October, or evaluate it on a monthly basis. And I do stress, if something does come up, we will have a meeting, because that is our responsibility. But Dean, please go ahead.
Yeah, if we were to adopt this, I'm looking at the calendar here. So September, which days would we?
We have a forum scheduled for the 12th, so we would have we have a meeting.
So we would start with a regular meeting on the 5th.
9/12, we have a forum? For the 12th. Nope.
So we would meet on the 5th.
We would meet on the 19th, the 3rd, the 17th, and the 31st if we were to expand it into September and October.
Would we meet on the 5th of September?
We have nothing scheduled for the 5th at the moment, no. Unless there's a need to have a meeting, right now, that meeting is not, it is basically canceled at the moment.
Okay, so the off weeks would be?
The 26th, the 10th, and the 24th. Depending on how far we want to go with this.
I would suggest that if we do this, we do it as a trial for September and October and not go into November and December.
That's fine.
We may determine, and this, as Shireen was giving the history here, this past summer, even though we did vote every other week, it felt as though we didn't really do that because we had a forum. There were other
Definitely
issues.
for August, we've been meeting every week.
We did.
So, I'm okay if we want to just do this as a trial for September and October with those dates as you mentioned.
Okay. Trial for September, October, and we'll evaluate mid-August.
The understanding if there's, as you pointed out, if there is some emergency or urgent item, we will call a meeting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jeff?
Yeah, I think we maintain maximum flexibility. I'm certainly willing to try it September, October, as Select Board Member Nicastro just mentioned. I was wanting to hear from Jill just on her perspective from staff resources and whether that helps the staff in their preparations for meetings. And I do think that it will be impossible during budget season.
Yes, and so with the weekly schedule, we essentially have one free day during the week to just start planning for the next meeting. It's usually Monday, and that's when we're really trying to work on getting ready for the meeting the next day. So I think with this biweekly schedule for September and October, I'm hoping it gives us more time to give you just more quality and better staff reports and have us prepared more for the meetings and the follow-up after the meeting. So I know that staff has enjoyed, technically, they haven't had to have a meeting every week in August because of the summer residence meeting or the Center for Active Living first workshop. So we're in favor, and we're certainly open to try it. I think you're going to start getting into your budget meetings probably in early December, because we're trying to get the budget done as soon as possible, at least first draft before Alex retires. So I'm absolutely in favor of trying it out for September and October.
Thank you, Jill.
Okay, do we need a formal motion, or you get the consensus? Oh, sorry, Mike.
Yeah, no, I know I'm out here in the wilderness, but I'll echo pretty much what everybody has said, and I'm not going to make a big deal out of whether we extend it into that first meeting in November. My main consideration was the one that Jill just articulated. I wanted to hear what she had to say, and I think that's an important consideration, that the staff have the opportunity to deal with what is going to be a somewhat new and different challenge as we have the transition from Alex to whomever her successor may be. And I think from our perspective, I agree with Shireen. I'm committed. I'll meet whenever and however and as long as is needed. But I think working outside of meetings can be very productive as well for us as well as the staff. And so, I'm fine with September and October. If it were up to me, I would probably skip that November 7th meeting as well, but it's not a deal breaker.
All right, I think we'll start with September and October and evaluate. I think that's more than fair. All right? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Next, discussion of Affordable Housing Trust new composition and transition. Gloria?
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Just here to check in about the new Affordable Housing Trust composition and appointments. Since we last spoke about this in June, warrant Article 40 was approved by the Attorney General's office. So the bylaw was approved, and per the bylaw, you have 60 days from the date of approval to appoint the new members to the trust. It was approved on August 10th, which means October 9th is the date by which the new members have to be appointed. Happens to be Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples Day, and the closest select board meeting to that date is October 3rd, so I'm kind of taking that as your drop dead date to appoint new members. Just as a quick reminder, membership is going to be 2 members from the select board, 1 member of the Community Housing Partnership, and 4 at-large members from the community. The bylaw, which was approved actually in reference to the members from the community, said, quote, considering a broad range of expertise, including education and experience in real estate development and financing. So I'm here before you tonight to talk about how you want to go about doing this. I understand that there was some talk about potentially appointing 2 select board members earlier and then the rest of the members later. I reached out to town council about the process for this, since the approved bylaw did not talk about a process for appointing these. And per town council, it's his opinion that all 7 members of the trust should remain in office until all 7 are reappointed, in his words, in one fell swoop. So I guess the next steps are thinking about, which 2 members of the select board are on it. And as Shauna and I start to do some outreach in the main sheet, do you want to look at specific kind of sectors of expertise for the 4 at-large members? I know real estate and financing were mentioned, but, architecture, construction, there are a lot of areas that could bring some valuable expertise to the new trust.
I'm just going to share a couple thoughts. I know, from my opinion, I know there's one candidate on the select board. It's kind of a no-brainer, and I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I believe Shireen would be a great candidate if we do. Of the 2 of us, I think I would be very supportive of Shireen being one of the 2 select board members, which, if she were indulge that position. So I do think that is. I think then this becomes which of the 4 of us would want to serve as the second individual. So that's my initial thoughts. But as far as the other composition of the other members, I guess it's a procedural question. I know we're going to keep the 7 of us in place, and I agree with that philosophy, 7 of us in place until the complete flip over of the new composition. But we have currently 2 non-select board members. I would hope they are not disqualified from potential consideration of being future members. I want to figure out, because I'm trying to get clarification on their status, because they would, if, I'm just throwing, they may not even be interested, but if someone were to want to stay, what is the procedure or protocol?
I think that would be your call. I've encouraged people who are already on the board to apply, so you'll have applications. Okay. I know that Megan could be a potential at-large member. Bruce could actually be a community housing partnership member, or at-large. There's nothing to say that at-large members can't be other members on other boards that serve. But yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Shireen.
Thank you, Corey, and thank you for the recommendation, and I'd be very happy to serve on the new housing trust. When I think about who I see within the community and the broad range of expertise that we had discussed prior, which was education, experience in real estate development financing, I think some of the other things that we should be looking for is talent within the funding opportunity side of things, people that understand the affordable housing funding mechanisms. I think there are people out there in the community. Whether they express some interest in participating in the trust is to be seen. I'd encourage each one of the board members to go out and talk to the community and express interest, not recruit, but, ask people if they'd be interested to apply. I guess the process would be the same. An application goes to the town, we do the interview process, and then we vote as a board. So that's my thoughts on it. As far as the at-large members, that's pretty much where I'm landing. And I think there's already people in the community that are very interested in participating in this committee to begin with. So that's it. That'll be very encouraging to interview them all.
Okay, Dean. Or Jeff? Okay, Jeff.
No, it was a process question for those folks. Should they start applying now?
I believe we have received some.
We already
We
have some applicants.
already have applicants, yes.
Okay, all right, so if we have folks out there, okay.
Okay.
Good, thanks. Yep.
Dean?
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with, I'm delighted that Shireen is interested in serving, because I was going to suggest 2 members. One was Shireen and the other, I don't know if he wishes to serve, but I was going to suggest the chair, Corey Metters, as the other board member. As far as the at-large members, well, I do think if they're interested, they should be considered, Megan Story and Bruce Bean, because of their interest. But there is to be a member from the Community Housing Partnership. It doesn't say the chair, but the chair I know has applied. Mm-hmm. And I think she would be an excellent candidate to consider, assuming she continues to be the chair. I have no problem with publicity to encourage people of varying backgrounds, as Serena articulated. There may be other areas that we might be interested in, but I do want to say, I don't want to feel limited by any specificity other than what's in the bylaw. I guess those are my comments on the appointments. We already have about 4 or 5 candidates. I know one person approached me a while back and has submitted an application.
Okay.
And I just said, send it in to Shauna, and that's what's been happening. We have 4, yes, thank you.
4 candidates, okay, great. Mike, and then back to Jeff.
Yeah, thanks. Just, first of all, I agree. I mean, I drafted the language I used. I picked it up from elsewhere, but the part about real estate development is intended to incorporate the more specific things that Gloria mentioned: architecture, construction, et cetera. Anybody who has any experience in a piece of creating housing, I think, is somebody who is a legitimate candidate. So I don't think there's any limitation in my mind in that description in terms of what we're looking for. I'm glad to hear that we have 4 candidates. I hadn't known that. I'd like to know who the candidates are, and I will say here, I would encourage everybody with any interest out there to get your application in so that we can move smartly. We don't have a lot of time here. And the last thing I'll say is it's with respect to the at-large members today, namely Bruce and Megan. I think it would be unfortunate if this changeover were either intentionally or inadvertently a vehicle for their not continuing to serve to the end of their terms on the current board. And I would note, by the way, that the terms for everybody other than the select board members are max 2 years. So you have the option, if you want to create a kind of a staggering of the terms of appointing people to either 1 year or 2. So those would be my thoughts at the present time. But I do think we need to move very quickly on this.
Jeff.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Those are all good thoughts. I think, especially given the kind of the nascent effort we have here, I think getting expertise in affordable and attainable housing financing and development is critical. So I would look toward that kind of background from applicants. And I really enjoyed your notion of staggered terms, because then we can really kind of get a mix cooking here of expertise going forward. I like the thought of an architect, an architect. And I like the thought of folks that have done real estate development in this arena in their past. And I would also echo your notion of, boy, I'd hate to see, Megan and Bruce, if they're interested, to not kind of continue until at least the end of their term of service. I think they've both been very committed this far. So I would certainly want to test their interest in going forward. And those are my thoughts. Thanks.
All right. That really doesn't answer all your questions, though.
No, that's really helpful. We'll put some more specific information out in the main sheet when we solicit applications. I'm just thinking in my mind scheduling, which is building on your last conversation. So applications, interview appointments maybe at the last minute at the October 3rd meeting. That way you can take all applications in and review them on September 19th? Or do you feel comfortable reviewing applications up to the same day that you appoint them?
I think we really need a timeline, because this is fairly tight.
Interview process, yeah.
Because if we're going to, we have to have a term date for applications being accepted, and then you need to line up the interviews.
Right.
Because there's going to be, if there's 4 people already, there's going to be a lot of people, I would think, very interested. So,
We could have 8 or 10.
yeah, so we've got some work to do in advance of the 60 days.
We
think.
should have a cutoff for apply.
We should,
Yeah.
we should. So, and then, you know,
So let's think about the
we have to
schedule.
bake,
So
we have to
we
bake
really,
time in to interview these folks, so we make a, cogent decision.
yeah, so we really only have 2 more meetings until the 3rd. So we have September 19th and October 3rd.
Well, we've also been known to interview off days.
We can do
Okay.
interviews on
Okay, that
Thursday.
sounds good.
Thursday,
So-
Thursday, whatever, yeah.
Maybe deadline September 19th, and you can at least get the names at that meeting and then set up interviews for a special meeting and then appointments on October 3rd.
I think we should move it up a week.
Yeah.
Just because knowing how difficult it is to schedule, so do you want to have it at September 11th?
No, I'd rather go further the other way because I think that it's going to take time for people to apply. I honestly, I think the 19th is probably the best choice. That's only a couple weeks away, really.
And that gives us a couple of weeks to interview.
Okay.
So, or I suppose if we had a deadline of September 18th, we could compile the list for you for September 19th at least. It would be last minute.
Oh, yeah,
At least you'd be
yes.
aware of it. How about that?
I think that's good. Then we'd have it for that meeting, the select board meeting. That's one day.
You're not going to interview on the 19th.
No.
No, and then.
But we'd have the list of people that were interested, and then we could set forth the interviewing schedule.
So interview will be a special meeting.
Can I just interject here? I think it's too much. I think in the past, we've had the applications come through with a deadline, and then the scheduling goes out to the assistant town manager. I don't think we have to review a list. I think we just get their
Okay.
information and the schedule goes. I don't think it has to be that detailed, Gloria, but thank you.
We may not be able to interview everybody in one session.
May not.
If we end up having 8 or 10, I would suggest 2 sessions.
Sessions,
Yes.
that.
And we could do it a Wednesday, Thursday, or a Wednesday, or Thursday. I mean, we could make it.
Okay.
Okay.
So just to confirm, do you want the deadline for applications September 18th still? Is that, you think, give you enough
Yes.
time? We can compile them, and you'll just tentatively have the Thursday, the 21st for interviews for your first session, if that gives you enough
Well,
time.
if there's 4 already, why don't we start to schedule them in now? I
Yeah.
mean, what's the
Yeah,
point in
okay,
waiting?
Yeah.
I mean, let's not,
If we could get some of the
Wait,
interviews in
yeah.
now, yeah, I agree.
yeah, if we
Okay.
can plug them in.
Rolling interviews, okay.
So if a special meeting is being scheduled, does it make sense to potentially schedule an affordable housing trust meeting on the same day, so you guys don't have to come in multiple times? Because we do have, in the next step section of my staff report, we do have like a critical decision point that's, was actually supposed to be done today, but because the agenda was so packed, we decided to postpone it. But the preferred development concepts for all of the community outreach and engagement we've been doing for the Buckley property and the Meeting House Road property, I mean, maybe that's a way of figuring out a schedule for that.
Want to
Does
do that
not
on
seem
September
like a
19th?
popular suggestion.
Want to do that on September 19th?
We have a regular meeting on the 19th. Is that, I mean, what does our agenda, future agenda look like?
Hang on.
Should have it actually right here.
I think it is
Yeah,
tentative.
so we have it
It's on
on
it,
there, yeah, as a tentative item, the last item on. You're also going to, we've scheduled the annual review of town boards, committees, and commissions, that meeting as well.
Okay.
I mean, I'm comfortable keeping it on the 19th, but how does the board feel about that? Okay.
That's for the concepts, not for the appointments,
The concepts.
because we're going to have to interview people.
But after that, so you'll have the list on the 19th, so you'll have a sense of how many people have applied and how many days of interviews you might have to schedule. But no interviews on the 19th. I think that covered all my questions.
Well, you had in your, can I, Mr. Chairman? Gloria, you had in your memo wanting to know whether the current trust should continue to do its work or defer major decisions. Is that what you had in mind?
No, actually, back in the meeting of June, we posed that question to this board, and you decided that we should just keep
Right.
moving forward. And I think actually at this point, because there have been so many, meetings, and there's been so much information, and I did that whole like data dump after the last meeting with like links to every document, and then a long email following. I think that it would be sensible to move forward with all of that. I think it would be really difficult to bring an entirely new board up to speed with all of that data.
Okay. Okay.
All set?
We're good? All right, we're
Thanks.
good. All right. We have a couple of reappointments. My packet here. We have one for the constable. We have Benjamin J. Nickerson until June 30th, 2026. Would anyone, please? Shereen.
Mr. Chair, I move to reappoint the following constable, Benjamin J. Nickerson, until June 30th, 2026.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member DeCastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell?
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. And we have another one for the registrar.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, please.
I move that we reappoint the following registrar, Joseph P. Caputo, until June 30th, 2026.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member DeCastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell?
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Lastly, item G, Town Manager's Monthly Report for July 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as I typically do with the monthly reports, I recognize the years of service of our long-serving and even our newest members of Team Chatham. And so I have the anniversary dates in August as well as September. And many of the names you've recognized, starting with Michelle Clark for August with 17 years. She's the Project and Operations Assistant. And Candace Cook, the Assistant Assessor, also 17 years. Me as Town Manager, 12 years. And many of the people that I hired since then, including Bill Field, firefighter for 11 years, Rachel McGrath, firefighter, Michael Lopriori, EMS captain, who was promoted recently to that. Sharon Drown is our treasurer collector, and then Gloria McPherson is our housing and sustainability director. And so that's for August. Noteworthy for September, it's pretty amazing. Sergeant Bill Glover has been here for 42 years. So kudos to him and his longevity, and also with our firefighter Kevin Moore, who many of you know, and I worked very closely with when he was the fire union president. So he's been here 29 years. So a lot of longevity moving forward in public safety. Justin Chavano, while he's most recently the fire chief, he's been with the town for 18 years. Our deputy police chief, Lou Malzone, as well, 17 years. Joe Amara for police officer, 9 years. Diane Byers, our animal control officer, 8 years. Sue as the assistant treasurer collector. Connor Brickley, firefighter. Jess Rogers, who's been promoted to outreach coordinator. And Kristen Taylor is one of our newest firefighters. And we want to welcome our newest hire in accounting, and that is Andrea Warner. And she's taking the position as the accounting assistant, working with Cheryl in her office. And then you've seen it on social media, but we're doing heavy recruitments right now for positions that are opening. Shauna recently put out a social media post with all of the positions, but the postings are in process or have been done for the 2 behavioral health community services clinician, 1 for adult, 1 for youth. And both of those positions are in community services. And we have the recreation assistant, which was formerly known as the building supervisor. That's a vacant position because Hunter was promoted to our new Chatham TV and IT department. And then we're using recruiters for the Director of Natural Resources and the Director of Finance, and those have been posted. And then noting below are the coming soon positions, a Department Assistant for Human Resources, our housing and health inspector that was just approved at the recent town meeting with the short-term rental revenues as an offset. We have a new DPW transfer station gate attendant. We're looking for a DPW highway equipment and operator, a mechanic, a department assistant part-time for the town clerk, and a part-time administrative assistant for the airport and airport-related activities, working in DPW as well. I think that rounds it out for the new positions, and right now, I think that's all that needs to be done. Megan by herself, she hasn't even posted her position yet, unfortunately, but we're working to help her out so we can get all the postings done and get everybody in. And I think also what's really attractive about our positions is hearing your comments tonight about Alex and all the work she's done. This board's been very supportive and very appreciative of staff, and that's very well taken for new recruits. And also the new compensation and classification plan that we recently adopted. It's a 15-year plan versus a 9-year plan, so there's good growth in keeping up with market rates for many of the new employees that have been hired, as well as the existing employees. So that's it for my formal report. You have behind it the department's monthly reports, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Just quickly, Corey. Yeah, Jill, on the folks who are working to recruit, we have more than one recruiter? Is it a different recruiter for each position for Director of Finance and Director of Natural Resources?
Yes, I decided to go with two different ones. The one for the Director of Natural Resources, Cape-based firm, although there is a off-Cape address, but Tom Grew, who's I think the first town manager here, and his partner Rick White, who was the town manager in Dennis, really understand the Cape, and having to explain natural resources to a candidate when they're recruiting, I really thought it was important that they understand, what our priorities are here. And then the recruiter for the Director of Finance is Paradigm Recruiting. It's a contingent of those who teach finance and accounting through the Suffolk program, former town and city managers. Bernie Lynch is a former city manager in Chelmsford and has really dedicated a lot of his career to the MMA and succession planning and bringing in new recruits. So he's been teaching at Suffolk for the local government program for a number of years, including some of our current finance employees have been students of his, and so I thought it was a really good opportunity to tap into that Rolodex per se that he provides.
That sounds good. And these are all listed on the social media right now?
Yeah, on the town's website, there's a
Okay, on the
listing with
town's
job
website.
descriptions and posting deadlines. And the other ones that Megan felt that she can handle in-house, and Kathy's been helping her as well.
Okay, thank you.
Final thoughts? All right, thank you very much. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Select Board Member Shell,
Aye.
Select Board Member Castro,
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis,
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Good night, everyone.